Chapter 1. We'll begin reading at verse number 10. Joshua chapter 1. Amen. Joshua chapter 1. Begin at verse number 10. Here's the word of the Lord. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, Pass through the host, and command the people, saying, Prepare you victuals, for within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan, to go in to possess the land, which the Lord your God giveth you to possess it. And to the Reubenites, and to the Gadites, and to half the tribe of Manasseh, spake Joshua, saying, Remember the word which Moses the servant of the Lord commanded you, saying, The Lord your God have given you rest, and have given you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your cattle shall remain in the land which Moses gave you on this side Jordan. But ye shall pass before your brethren, armed, all the mighty men of valor, and help them, until the Lord have given your brethren rest, as he have given you, and they also have possessed the land which the Lord your God giveth them. Then ye shall return unto the land of your possession, and enjoy it, which Moses the Lord's servant gave you on this side Jordan, toward the sun rising. And they answered Joshua, saying, All that thou commandest us we will do, and whithersoever thou sendest us we will go, according as we hearken unto Moses in all things, so will we hearken unto thee. Only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. Whosoever he be that doth rebel against thy commandment, and will not hearken unto thy words in all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. Only be strong and of a good courage. Before you take your seat this morning, look at your neighbor, smile at them like you brush your teeth, and say, Neighbor, oh neighbor. Today we're going to talk about the proper response to instructions. Amen. Y'all may be seated. The proper response to instructions. Let me pause and just say, I'm not going to be as thorough in my exposition on today. There's a lot in this text. And to be honest, I planned to approach this sermon in a different point of view until last night, while I was watching the #1 Alabama Crimson Tide put a beat down on the Louisville Cardinals. I must say that I was sad, I was disappointed, because I could not believe that they went out and did not show up. But one thing that always captured my attention was the leadership of Nick Saban. He's never content, he's never pleased until the job is done. And even when the job is done, he's always disappointed about something. And there was one time when the Louisville Cardinals, they were already down by 30, no points on the board. And the Alabama secondary, which is the people that try to stop the quarterback from making or completing passes, broke down and Louisville scored a touchdown. If you look on the sideline, Nick Saban was furious. He was upset. They were already up by 20 plus points. And his instructions to the defense when they came off the field was, we're better than that. Don't let up. We don't need to give up points like that. Y'all got beat. When y'all go back on the field, y'all better get it right, or all of y'all are going to be benched. And to Many of our surprised when the defense came back on the field, they went 3 and out. They shut down Louisville for the rest of the game. And it made me pause and look at what Nick Saban did. He gave his players instructions. The players respected him so much so that they said, we aren't going to let Coach down. But as they were going back onto the field, Nick Saban had the way of, let's go, which encouraged them that our coach has our back. And if we stick to the game plan, we know that we're going to make him proud. Even if we mess up, even if things don't go all the way like we want it to go, if we stick to the game plan and do what he has instructed us to do, we know we're going to be all right because we got what it takes. And I'm afraid that so many of us in the body of believers, we fail to follow instructions because we don't remember that we have what it takes. And since we don't remember that we have what it takes, we feel that when we are given instructions, people are pointing out what we cannot do right. But the truth is that whenever God gives the leader instructions to give to the people, it's not that God is saying you ain't getting it right, but God is saying there is more that you are capable of doing. And I want to remind you that if you can do it, I got to stay on you. Isn't that what we do as parents whenever we have kids and they keep on messing up? It's not that we are mad because they keep on messing up. We're mad because they can do better. And for some reason they feel as if they cannot do better because their actions speak louder than words. And perhaps God is telling us, Pleasant Grove, on this first Sunday morning, that God, he wants more of us, and the way he's going to get more from us is when we learn how to follow his instructions. Amen. How many of us have difficulties following instructions? Amen. Some of us, if we'll be honest, when we go to the store and buy something, we just throw away everything but the pieces. And we say, oh, I don't need that. I'm going to put it all together. And then halfway through, we're like, what is this for? What is that for? And then we almost allow our pride to get in the way, and so we find ourselves wanting to dig back in the trash can and pull out those instructions. We're like, nah, I ain't going to do it. And many times when we go about doing ministry, when we go about living our lives as believers, we become so prideful that when God says you ain't doing it right, we're like, no, I'm good. And God says you don't have to be that way if you learn to listen and follow the instructions. And so we find here in Israel, they have been sojourning from Egypt, and they've been stuck in the wilderness for 40 years. Stuck not going anywhere, stuck just going in circles over and over and over. And what tripped me out was that God had moved in the lives of some of Israel, that he had allowed them to go to a land that he had given them to live. Which lets us know that not everybody was willing to be disobedient like most other people. Which lets us know that God can bless some of us while everybody else is being disobedient. All right. Let me say that one more time. God has the ability to bless some of us, even though a lot of us may be disobedient. And I want to remind us that even if God has blessed us when everybody else may be disobedient, sometimes we are given the instructions to go back and help those out that are in need. And today I want to talk to us about how we should respond to instructions. Now we're going to look at this in two different ways. We're going to look at it from the standpoint of leadership, and then we're going to look at it from the viewpoint of those who are following. The first thing that we're going to look at is the leader to the core group. If when you start reading at verse number 10, it's clear that Joshua begins to give instructions from God that is aligned with what God had already told Moses and then Joshua to do. The instructions Joshua gave was only him repeating what he had already and what the people had already heard. But notice who Joshua gives detailed instructions to. He gives them to the core group. He gives the instructions to the officers. And if you've read Numbers, you will understand that Moses had organized everything to a T, to where everything was in place. So whenever Moses died and Joshua became the leader of Israel, everything was aligned and ready to work with precision. And all Joshua had to do was go to the leadership, the core leadership, the ones that were serving in the army. He went to them and gave them instructions. Let me pause here and suggest this. God may not give instructions to you. Let me say it again. Because for some people it went in one ear and out the other. Some just missed it altogether. God will not always tell you or send leadership to tell you specifically what you are supposed to do. But God has set things up to where if God gives something to leadership and leadership gives it to the core group, then the core group has the responsibility of spreading the word. Let me pause here and put this into Pleasant Grove's perspective. There are many times that we expect everything, every little detail to come from me. And I understand that. But there's a reason why we have ministry meetings. And the reason why we have ministry meetings is not just so that we can take up time sitting and looking at each other, but we have ministry meetings so that those that are in charge of other ministries can get the word from the pastor to pass it down to everybody else. But here's the thing, we expect the pastor just to come to us and let us know everything in detail, and sometimes that may not be the best way to do it. Here's the reason why. Because Joshua learned in Numbers, if you remember, that whenever Moses opened up everything to everybody, everybody couldn't handle it. Everybody didn't have the faith needed to do what needs to be done. But I've learned that if the leader can trust the leadership that's over ministries, and the ministry's leadership can buy into what God is saying, then they can go back and say, y'all listen, this is what we got to do. This is what God is leading us to do. This is what we have to do. If we don't do it, we'll be going against God, and we don't want to make God upset. And too many of us, whenever people don't come to us directly and pull us over to the side, and I know I wasn't going to get too many amens, I'm going to go ahead and preach anyhow. The reason why God may move that way is because sometimes we aren't able to handle it and we get mad. Whenever people say, well, I can't talk to you right now about this because it's not the time. And sometimes you need to understand that God does things in phases. There are stages to what God does, and sometimes we ain't ready for where God is trying to take us. We see Israel wasn't ready, but God said, when you learn how to do things my way, all of the pieces will fall into place. We see that Joshua gives the core group the instructions, and I don't put it all in a nutshell. I'm not going to go into details, but what he was saying in essence is prepare everybody to get ready to move. in a sense, if we look at it again from the public perspective, Joshua, if he was a pastor, he would call the deacons, the trustees, the administrative staff, the ministry leaders, and the associates. He'll get them all together and say, look, y'all, it's time for us to go get what God promised us. And I wonder how many of us, if in a staff meeting, if all ministry heads came and God gave us the instructions, it's time for us to go get what's ours. How many of us will be ready to go? How many of us will say, Pastor, I'm all in? How many of us will say, whatever I got to do, I'm willing to do it? But many times we find ourselves and God says, if you can't handle the instructions that are given, you can't handle where you're going. And Joshua, he speaks to the core group, and watch this, after he gives instructions, watch how the leader responds to giving instructions to the people. After Joshua gives instructions to the core group, he takes the time to encourage them. Look at the text. Verse number 13. It says, remember the word which Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God have given you rest, and have what? Given you this land. Then go down to verse number 15. Until the Lord have given your brethren rest, as he have given you, and they also have possessed the land which the Lord your God giveth them, then you shall return unto the land of your possession, and do what? Enjoy it, which Moses the Lord's servant gave you on this side Jordan toward the sun rising. And what God is saying through Joshua is, I know the task ahead may be difficult, but here's the shout about it. If God gives you instructions and tell you you're going back and you're going to enjoy everything that's yours, that lets you know that you shouldn't go into it defeated, but you should go into it and say, well, if God said I'm going to be victorious and get back to what's mine and enjoy it, then I may as well go ahead. I'm ready to go. And so many times, when God gives us instructions and he tells us ahead of time, you are going to be victorious, we don't believe it. I thought I'd have a witness. I'm glad I brought my own. We traveled to the Gospels, and Jesus, when he was about to travel with his disciples across the sea, he says, let's get on this boat and go to the other side. They get on the boat and a storm comes. Jesus is knocked out sleeping, and out of nowhere the disciples go, they wake up, Jesus say, Jesus, do you care if we die? And Jesus in a real sense, get up, man. Why are y'all worried? I told y'all we gonna get to the other side. And what Jesus did, he just talked to the storm. He talked to the winds and the waves. They chilled out. And that lets us know that if God is with us, he's able to handle any opposition that comes our way. All we got to do is trust the promises that he's already given us. So Joshua, he gives them encouragement after giving instructions. And here's the reason why. The reason why Joshua gives them instructions and then gives them encouragement is because Joshua remembered what he had to go through to get to the point of giving them instructions in the first place. All right. If you remember anything that was said last week, God had to come to Joshua how many times? 3 times. And tell him what? Be of good courage and be strong. Now Joshua says, if God had to tell me 3 times to be of good courage and have strength, then I need to let y'all know that everything's going to be all right. Because I understand as pastor what it takes to call meetings, to say let's meet, to say we don't talk about this. And if God has to encourage me time and time, and even in the meeting, he has to encourage me to go ahead and form my mouth to say the words, I know that it's imperative that I encourage you all after giving instructions. And sometimes we miss the encouragement because we automatically think, what are you trying to say about what we doing? Preach it. But the good news is that God will always give us everything that we need. Even the encouragement, even when we can't see it. But watch this, let's not keep you too long. Secondly, we look at how the core group responds to the leader after he gives instructions. Look at verse number 16. Let me read that. It says, and they answered Joshua, saying, all that thou commandest us we will do, and whithersoever thou sendest us we will go, according as we hearken unto Moses in all things, so will we hearken unto thee. Only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. Whosoever he be that doth rebel against thy commandment, and will not hearken unto thy words and all that thou commandest, him he shall be put to death. Only be strong and of a good courage. Now we see that, first of all, the core group shows their ability to encourage Joshua by being willing to follow his leadership as he follows God. They respond and say, all that you command us to do, we will, and where you send us, we will go. Ministry leaders committed to total obedience to God's instructions. What they say in a real sense is that some of us witness what our parents and grandparents failed to do. So we get it now. If we are going to Canaan, if we're going to help our fellow brothers get to Canaan, we have to follow orders. We can follow orders because the message has not changed. And let me pause and suggest to us that if the message from God is always the same, you have nothing to fret. Because I get afraid whenever it's like, oh, well, we need to do something else. Well, you know, that didn't work, so we're going to move on. But what I've learned is that if God has given us instructions, he's faithful to keep his promises. And the end goal will always be the same. And some of us, we get tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Probably some of y'all thinking, when are we going to get out of this series? We're moving. Because he just keep on talking about the same thing. Well, until we get it, God says sometimes you got to be reminded over and over and over again. This is like when I was a child, there was things that my mama told me not to touch. And I still, but she had a way of letting me know, boy, you ain't gonna touch it again. Because she would discipline me until I got it. And maybe that's what God has to do with some of us. If you just look back at your own personal lives, and you'll understand that there are some things that I did over and over and over again that I failed to follow the instructions of God. And I realized that he had to get on me over and over. And it wasn't until I learned to follow him that things got better. But not only did they show their willingness to follow, but watch this. They showed their encouragement by praying for Joshua. Look at the prayer. The prayer says, only the Lord thy God be with thee, as he was with Moses. The prayer was, we pray that God be with you. It doesn't sound like much. But if God is with you, we know that he's going to provide everything that you need. That he's going to give you the courage and strength. He's going to comfort you in discouragement, whatever you need. If God be with you, he knows what to do for you. And let me be selfish for a moment. Because I don't always ask people to pray for me, because sometimes I can be a little prideful.
Come on, friend.
But every now and then, I need prayer.
Yeah.
And I know there's people that's praying for me. I know it is. Sometimes, as I've been told, I can tell, Pastor, when you pray for me, because that thing that I was dealing with, it just got better. Well, I can tell when y'all pray for me too. But what I've discovered is that sometimes what helps you to be able to deal with me is if you get down on your knees and ask God to be with me. Because what I've discovered is, if God is with me, I can be the pastor that God needs me to be for you. Which oftentimes will tell us that I may not always do what you want me to do, but if I'm doing what God has called me to do for Pleasant Grove, we know the end result is going to be okay. And so every now and then I need you to pray for me. God, be with my pastor. Because I know that when you pray, God, be with my pastor, whatever I'm lacking, God will provide. Whatever we need as a church, he will direct my mind to get to the resources that we need. When you learn how to pray for the leader, it blesses all of us. And so many times, so many of us are in difficulties in life because we ain't praying for the leader. We want to. And while you beating the leader down, you beating yourself down. And so sometimes I need you to pray for me. And I want you to pray for me because it's going to help you become who God needs you to be. But not only that, but they show that their willingness to follow was a matter of life and death. Look at verse 18. It says, whosoever he be that doth rebel against thy commandment and will not hearken unto thy words, and all that thou commandest him, he shall be put to death. Whew. This is one of those things where they saw what being disobedient to God would take them to. They understood the consequences of being disobedient, because God said in Numbers chapter 13 and 14, right? Y'all remember that? That everybody that disobeyed what God was telling them to do, they either died in that instance or they died within the 38 years that followed. Even Moses died because of his disobedience and was not able to walk into the promised land. Now, I'm not saying that God is going to cause us to have physical death if we're disobedient. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that God will keep his word. And even if it's not physical death, it can be spiritual death. It can be a sense of death in terms of your mind, your finances, your life. Everything that you go through, everything may be a struggle, more so than what it should be. And as pastor, I want you to understand that y'all ain't pleasing me. It ain't got nothing to do with me. And I don't know, and maybe I should say it again, because somebody may believe that what you are doing or what you are not doing is hurting me. But it ain't hurting me, because I know there's somebody that's above me, that's in control of all things. And so I'm not worried about y'all looking at me a certain way. I'm worried about y'all looking at God a certain way. And when you confuse God's directives as being my directives, we'll be like Israel, and we'll miss out on the promise, and it'll cause us to deal with unnecessary consequences. And who wants to deal with unnecessary consequences? And so they say, we understand that if we don't follow what God is saying, we can end up like our grandparents, our parents. And they say, we're going to follow you. And if anybody does not follow you, we understand that death will be their consequence. But watch this, lastly. They encourage him by reminding him of God's words. Now, this tripped me out. This shattered me in my spirit, because they were so connected to God this time around that they understood what God was trying to tell Joshua. And the way that you can encourage your pastor, your leader, your ministry head, whoever it may be, is by speaking the word of God back to them. I've discovered that when you speak the word of God, God's word is truth. And because his word is truth, whatever he says, it shall be. And if God has encouraged me through his word, I want to hear it, brothers and sisters. And God, sometimes when we are connected to him, will share with us what he shared with his servant leader, so that whenever we come to him, we can be able to say what God has already said, not knowing that God has already said. Don't you know that there are times whenever God has laid something on my heart, and he will send confirmation through somebody that's a member of Pleasant Grove that will say the exact same thing that God has said to me, and you didn't even know that God has said that to me. And the good news is that I can shout about it, because I know y'all are connected to God. And if y'all are connected to God, then I ain't got to worry about nothing, because I know that wherever God tells us to go, we will reach our destination. But we got to be connected to God first. I feel like preaching. I know we got to end. But God wants us to know today that when you're connected to him, we don't have to worry about what we don't have. We don't have to worry about what we're lacking. We don't have to worry about our struggles and our past. We don't have to worry about our insecurities. We don't have to worry about anything, because he's already promised us that we're going to enjoy and have rest. So as we are moving, what are we waiting on? Today, as I end this sermon, if I have not encouraged you all like I should have, I apologize. But know that I'm encouraging you right now that we got what it takes. That we are more than conquerors. We are not defeated, and everything that God has promised the Pleasant Grove Missionary Baptist Church in Heckley, he's already made a way for us to get in. All we got to do is step out and enjoy what he has promised. The reason why we can enjoy what he's promised is because, I got to say it, on one Friday, on a hill called Calvary, Jesus gave his life for us. He died, he was buried, but God raised him from the dead with all power. And because Jesus was obedient and he followed the instructions, God blessed him. But check this out, God he encouraged Jesus while he was dealing with following the instructions. Because if you recall in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus was praying and he was so tormented within that he started to sweat and it was drops of blood. Who did God send to minister? He sent his angels to encourage him, to give him the strength to be reminded of what he was called to do. And don't you know, if that God gave Jesus the encouragement that he needed, he'll do it for us too. Everybody standing. God, we thank you for your word. And we pray, Lord God,